Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here, and welcome back to our countdown of the 100 non-consecutive weeks to the 100th and final episode of Database Rangers Power Reviews. I hope you are all doing well. I hope you're having a happy Hanukkah to those of you who celebrate. We have had a lovely first 2 nights outside of everyone in the house being sick other than me. Hopefully I stay that way, although my arthritis is at least flaring up. Welcome to everyone in the chat. Thank you, Sean, for the happy Hanukkah. Happy Friday, Rudy. Welcome, Jenny. Congratulations on wrapping up your first final of the semester. Hope that everything went well there. We are counting down to winter break on my end, the teaching end of things. So that's going to be kicking off pretty soon. And I have been hard at work on 99. I just worked on putting together a major CG asset this week, the last CG asset that I think I will quite possibly ever have to do for the show, which is lovely, provided I did not forget anything. So I am continuing that work. I have just a few final shots for the last scene that I'm planning to shoot this weekend. I was going to try and shoot it tonight, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm having a bit of an arthritis flare-up, and I don't believe that I can successfully pull off some of the moves that I need to be pulling off without putting myself in a considerable amount of pain, so I'm going to be avoiding that. But I'm hoping to have it be a wrap on filming for 99 for myself this weekend. Hopefully I can actually follow through on that if my knees don't give out on me. I am waiting on a few submissions from people who I have messaged about their Patreon reward. So I will send out a reminder email for those of you who still haven't gotten back to me. I would love to get your submissions for the penultimate episode. So if you haven't done that yet, the clock is ticking. I am doing my best to try and finish this before the end of the month / year, because the end of the month is the end of the year. So I'm hard at work on 99, and I'm hoping that it will come together successfully in the coming weeks. Hard to believe that there's only like 3 weeks left in the year, which is wild. And I've got a lot of work ahead of me. So if everything's looking good and on schedule in the next week or so, I suppose I will be trying to assemble a trailer with an official release date. So let's keep our fingers crossed, knock on wood, that I can actually pull that off. So, all that said, let us dive into things and begin with our 3 equally non-controversial phrases. So, number 1, say with me, chat, Black Lives Matter. Number 2, say with me, chat, fascism is bad. And number 3, say with me, chat, superheroes are fun. So let us return after a few weeks away to seeing our favorite superhero, one Mr. Database Ranger, as we take a look at episode 96 of Database Rangers Power Reviews, our review of the Power Rangers Dino Thunder episode 27, Fighting Spirit. Let's go. Play. You can play. I need to hit a different button to make you play. Or you're not playing. There it goes. The Chromecast was not doing what it was supposed to be doing there. So, it's hard to believe, but we are now into the final 5 episodes of the series. And these final 5 episodes I had in mind very early on. These were the 5 episodes that I knew I wanted to have be the final 5 episodes of the series in terms of what reviews to cover. Um, Before I figured out anything else in terms of what reviews would be part of year 3. I knew that year 3 I wanted to do 20 classic episodes, and I knew that I wanted those last 5 episodes to be this set of 5 episodes before I started laying it out and outlining it. And so here we are at the first of those 5 episodes, Fighting Spirit, which is one of the more one of the bigger milestone episodes of the first 17 years of Power Rangers. Those classic episodes that I'm looking into here. And I feel like a nice way to kind of kick this off is with that, that big showdown between Dark Spectre and the Phantom Ranger. And here we're getting into some serious origin story for the Landlord. This is such a this whole side of the Twin Trilogies, which is named as such because not only is it 2 overlapping trilogies, but they're 2 overlapping trilogies focusing on relationships between twin characters. But it's so interesting being engaging in these performances where I am very much 2 separate characters acting opposite each other. I know that obviously Linkara has pioneered that well before I did. Well, before I was doing it, not that I was doing a pioneer or anything on this. But it's really fun to try and see how well I can effectively play these 2 as 2 completely different people, even though they're both obviously me. To help you forget that they're both played by the same person. Differences in body language, differences in phrasing and vocal tones, voice, obviously. Just the gestures. Everything it's a lot of fun here. And digging into this level of threat that we're actually encountering with Dark Spectre, it was a lot of fun to finally get a chance to explore. And this origin of how he entered the Rift is something that is really funny to me because it's based off of genuine physics theory, taken to fictional conclusions, but genuine physics theory that was proven after I had already determined that this was going to be the backstory. The gravitational waves that I use as the idea for how the planet-destroying super torpedoes created the rift. The rift. Gravitational waves were actually discovered just a few years ago. Like, I'd basically already figured out what it was that I was going to be having for how he survived, using the idea of the theoretical concept of gravitational waves. And then they actually discovered gravitational waves as I was working on this. Which, as a physics teacher, is super cool to me. But, I did take inspiration off things like, Interstellar and how gravity can transcend time and space. And, extremely intense gravity can have direct impacts on the time-space continuum that we are incapable of perceiving. And that's one of Database's abilities, is that he can perceive those alterations in space-time. Oh, this effect right here. This effect was ridiculous because you see how many of me there are, and you see how they're all at different angles. This is not me copying and pasting myself. This was me shooting the same action, the same words over and over and over and over. Like, I tend to do at least like 3 to 5 takes of any shot. So when there's 8 of me, that means that I am doing a minimum of 24 takes of that shot. And really, it was probably more like 50. And I had to do that for every line. And I kept going around in a circle over and over and over and over and over again to create that effect. That was wild to try and do. It just took me so long. I keep playing around with these bits of opacity to create that very ethereal sense that he's constantly moving, shifting, flickering in and out of existence. I really want to lean into his complete and utter mastery of this world that he's in. Creating ripples in the ground, causing database to fall, things like that. And so much of what's going on right now is the landlord just having that control, being that echoing voice, just drawing him down into the floor, causing the floor to vanish and making him fall. All of these little things that I really just kind of had fun playing with. And it was a little tricky to pull off some of this stuff, and I don't know necessarily how well it really came across, because there's only so much I can do with my resources and the time I have, not just in terms of technological resources, but time and ability, that I'm just constantly trying to give the general idea of what's happening. That feeling of him sinking through the floor. Which was definitely a little tricky. I had to flip the camera on its side and pretend that I was lying down in order to create that effect of sinking down. Gotta have the Transformers reference there. Yeah, wow, I've been doing live streams for a little while, haven't I? And yes, that is actually, Lumina, you do raise a good point there, that one of the big things I do play with Dark Spectre is him enjoying the nuance and dexterity of him of having a humanoid body. He was so brutish and rough as in the Malagor body that I really wanted him to really lean into this new refined persona. Much like, I really leaned into a very different persona with Database that kind of leans into the idea of sort of an autism spectrum parallel in terms of his fixations and things like that, his aversion to socialization. And I when I first brainstormed out this idea of the episode, I knew that I wanted to really play with it being a parallel of Fighting Spirit, having the 3 different versions of Database, playing with the 3 different colors, and trying to find my further variations on how I could play with the character. So this version, for instance, of Database's body is one that leans heavily into his, more nerdy analytical side, and I really wanted to play that up with just some small little touches. I'm wearing a different set of glasses here. Those are my my reading glasses for when I'm working with my editing. And I put my hair up into a little bit more of a bun. but it still, is very much just like an aspect of database. This was a very fun this was a very fun episode overall for me because I had so many opportunities to play with all these different versions of my characters. Plus it being this inversion of fighting spirit, where instead of Tommy unmorphed fighting 3 different Ranger forms, we have Database morphed fighting 3 different clones of himself. And I will admit that this was also somewhat inspired by the I love just a little quirks I managed to get into this into DB Clone 1 here. I will admit the database clones were very much inspired, not just by Fighting Spirit, but also from the Return to New York arc of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If any of you watched the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, that was the arc that was them coming back after the initial destruction of April's apartment. I say Rita. Of April O'Neil's apartment, and they invaded Shredder's tower, and they encountered 3 different clones of Shredder that were all monstrous in a different way. And I liked the idea of playing into that, only instead of it being clones of a villain, it's clones of our hero. Working for a villain who is also in a cloned body of our hero. Oh yeah, the 6th Ranger syndrome. Oh, that was another fun shot. There were so many little visions I had in my head of how I was going to play out this episode. The idea of kicking away the clone, and it not only sends him flying, but it literally pulls away the color that he brings along with him. And this is the more joking side of Database Ranger's personality, who's just always laughing at everything. Because we've also had this very snarky side of Database that comes through in the reviews, that goes hand in hand with his analytical side. But yeah, that scene where he kicks away the clone and it goes flying, that was so tricky to pull off in a number of ways. Because I literally had to bend over and just hop over and over and over again to get that bent over version of my body flying through the air, and then I just rotated it, and then I had to pull it away at just the right pace that it still looked like a reasonable arc of motion. So that was a shot that literally involved me just kind of standing like this, bent over, and just hopping up and down, trying to make it look like I was going flying, but at a 90-degree rotation. Oh yeah, Cassidy and Devin were great. As far as the comedic relief clones, comedic relief duos, they definitely rank very highly. But yeah, I also had fun with the different fighting styles of the different clones as well. This was very much an episode where I played opposite Yash a lot. This was the one that I really, really knew I was ultimately going to need a stunt double for. Because I knew I was going to need it for episode 90, but this is the one where I'm like, I can't do this many versions of myself fighting myself without having somebody else in the Phantom Ranger costume. Now, I do generally play the Phantom Ranger in most shots. And I do enjoy having just each clone having reveal after reveal after reveal. You know, the first one is revealing how, you know, they were all created in an attempt to recreate his synth organic body, his synth organic biomechanoid body for Dark Spectre. And now this one is establishing. I also just love the phrase "punching the space-time continuum in the face." That might be a small reference to Superboy Prime and like Infinite Crisis or whatever the name of that storyline was. I think it was Infinite Crisis. Possibly Final Crisis. One of those. This was one where I definitely leaned hard into so much of the of the episode in terms of creating the parallels in the structure. I will admit, I made myself, I think, a bit lightheaded by forcing out so much laughter as the blue clone here. But yeah, this is also just obviously the landlord just working to break database as best as he can with just like, okay, you want to know the truth? You want to know the truth? Here's the truth. Here's the truth. Here's the truth. And just trying to break him now with the truth of things. That, hey, you're the reason I have a body. Hey, you weakened the time-space continuum for me to be able to create further breakthroughs. And then again, the throw offset. That was another tricky shot to pull off. Because I had to have Yash grab my leg and pull, and then I also had to do the hop move as well, and have it cut just so the release would be kind of hidden in the cut. But I had to kind of throw myself across the room to get the right momentum with Yash moving me with the leg grab. Yeah, I did debate actually having the red, white, and green like they have for Fighting Spirit, but I decided to go instead with the primary colors of red, blue, and green here. What do you have to say? And then this one is just his, that sort of animal instinct fighting spirit that we encountered when he first started realizing he was the Phantom Ranger. And I'm going to admit, I really tried my best to be as intimidating as possible with my body language there. And I had actually been regularly going to the gym for a few years to try and get myself in better shape for this episode, but then COVID happened and I stopped going to the gym, so I was kind of back to square one again. I try to keep myself in good shape, but I know that I'm not, in full. I don't have the full-on Ranger physique. I want it to be believable that the character that I'm playing, it could have been a body created for somebody who would then become a Ranger. Although, honestly, since this episode, I've just been kind of given up on taking care of myself in terms of regular exercise and have just been doing my best to keep up with all the work I have ahead of me. Um, you know, chasing around RJ is my main source of exercise now. I hope to get back into doing Taekwondo again more regularly once the series ends. But yeah.
Tommy is confused, but his other fat self, Sam's Red Turbo, soon arrives to explain. Fascinating specimen, isn't he?
Oh, and here they each bring the colors with them.
And the funny thing is, he's the one closest to you. What? It's true, it's true, it's true. When your single and structure is recreated in its source form,
I got to play around with color and form so much in this episode.
That's the real you. No, that can't be. They explain that he hasn't really been fighting. You put so much faith in your power.
And all the colors fade to black.
It's time for you to wake up. Tommy awakens in his
I wish that I could have created the one effect I wish I could have done a better job on was these effects where he's on his back. Trying to create I was really trying to kind of create the effect of tendrils coming from the void and wrapping around him, and unfortunately just kind of ended up being almost like dark smudges, which is a shame. There's definitely a number of effects I wish I could have done a better job with. Overall, I'm really proud of how this episode came out. The look of it, the style of it, the fights. So much of it came out really well.
Where did you get that? Oh, it's very simple.
And here's his last big reveal.
Along with the help of my dark child, who I believe.
Yeah, it is actually kind of funny that Turbo is completely absent from Fighting Spirit, and yet I actually made Turbo a pretty major Turbo reference at the beginning of this episode, that the reason he had the Malagor body was specifically that he took advantage of it being a burnt out husk at the bottom of the ocean off the island of Neurantheus after being defeated by the Turbo Rangers, which coincides very well with the arrival of Dark Spectre. Basically, my thought was that was his big sort of return, which is honestly paralleled shockingly well with what the comics have been doing in recent years. The idea that he's somebody who is resurrected, that he's somebody who inhabits other bodies and needs a host body. Nothing in the show ever had him having a host body. And that was a shot I totally messed up. I totally missed the chroma key on that shot, because of course there needs to be an error in every episode of our reviews, and it's always so glaring to me when I'm watching it in retrospect. But my brain is always so dead by the time I'm actually publishing these that I just overlook them. But also these little voiceovers from Kay are kind of great, because it's the only time that you hear from anyone who's not a variation of me. That shot was so cool to be able to pull off. The 3-on-1 where 3 of them is me. I always knew I wanted to do that for this episode. It was something that Fighting Spirit didn't actually do, but I knew I wanted to do. And it was one of the advantages to the green clone having another little green screen error there with that little overlap on Red's face, unfortunately. Just a little cropping error. But yeah, Green having that energy ability really gave me a good way to be able to have the characters all be on screen, interact, without it creating intense difficulties with how they were going to be able to interact with physical contact. Also, one thing that's actually kind of funny is the Power Ruby prop that I'm using here. It's the same prop that I used for my morph sequence, and I actually have it right here. This is the Power Ruby that you see on the show. This is the Power Ruby that you see in Power Reviews when it's not the little red dot in the costume. This was like a crystal that MJ had that I just really liked the design of, and so obviously color correction in post. Which I'm really glad came across so well, especially since, like, you had me grabbing it. But fortunately, there's no blue really in my skin tone, so I was able to replace the blue of this with red fairly easily as a result.
I just want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for hanging in there with me through all this. And with that heartfelt,
I will take that explanation, Lumina. That the green background was a resonance thing. Oh yeah, having basically his heart ripped out.
What did I think of it? Well, more than any other season since the end of the Zordon era,
That
Dino Thunder prided itself
and then this was also, the big Megazord reveal, but it's all in shadow and we just get the fist going through. I'm glad I managed. I had to find a stock effect of the brick wall breaking, Kool-Aid Man style. But I'm really glad with how well that actually came out. With it coming towards the camera of that, hovering screen, and then boom, the wall bursts apart behind it, and you see that flurry of bricks. That big jump, off the edge of the tower at Dark Spectre's fortress. It was a lot of fun. It was fun because I was, again, just me just hopping up and down in front of a green screen, and then I had to shrink myself down and then create that arc of motion. And this is again where you hear a different voice. That same voice that we had back in episode 90, which was that first bit of foreshadowing.
With both producers having left shortly before Jason David Frank's original departure from the show, further reinforcing the sense of Dino Thunder acting as a reunion.
So yeah,
and with Sloan being
this
an active presence on Ranger Board,
this is basically the Tommy focus episode of Power Reviews. If anything could be said to be the Tommy focus episode of Power Reviews, it's really this.
All the reunions are easy. Okay, we need to move. In the years since leaving the show, Frank had
And yeah, Database is very aware. We need to get away from Dark Spectre. We need to get away from Dark Spectre. We need to get away from Dark Spectre.
But with ADR being such a prominent aspect of Power Rangers production,
I do love that little cut that they do to make it look like the key goes in. I feel like I've learned so much about editing tricks from Power Rangers, just in general. Yet Dino Thunder has always been a top tier season for me. So I really wanted to acknowledge it in the final 5. And I actually really went back and forth a lot on whether or not I wanted 94, or sorry, for episode 96. That's where we're on now, episode 96. But it really made me wonder. I really fought with myself on whether or not I wanted 94 to be Lost and Found in Translation, simply because I knew I was going to be doing another Dino Thunder episode. Dino Thunder episode so soon after. And I kept going back and forth. I'm like, okay, which one do I want to do first? Do I want to do End Action, or do I want to do Lost and Found in Translation? Because those are both very meta episodes that I feel are very important to discussing the history of the franchise. But I didn't want to do the Dino Thunder episodes so close to each other. But ultimately, I'm like, no, and action makes more sense from the couch review and the meta nature of Lost and Found translation. Makes much more sense with the with the wow, my brain's falling out, with the Power Morphicon framing device. And it's interesting that how these three episodes kind of overlap and lead into one another. We have the very meta RPM episode, and then we have the very meta Dino Thunder episode, and then we have the Milestone Dino Thunder episode. So they just kind of, have that middle chapter be almost like a mix of the general feel of the two other beginning and end chapters of this side of the Twin Trilogies.
And we even see it in our villains as the final door battle.
And then obviously, you've already seen what episodes 97 and 98 are. Again, major milestone episodes of the franchise. And I also like the idea of the final confrontation of this episode being taking place on the arm of the Megazord that you never get to really see in full. All you get is that little outline, the glowing eyes. And part of that is just, I hadn't finished making the costume yet. It took me like a whole another year before I was done making the costume. It took me a while to put the costume together because I was making a lot of different efforts towards having a 3D printed helmet that ultimately fell through. And then just a lot of interruptions. We'll get into that more with 97 and 98. But obviously, you're all aware of the health concerns I ran into shortly after 97, or shortly before, and then after 97. But yeah, this episode, it is really about, again, what it means to be a Power Ranger, which I feel is incredibly important to cover. One episode that I am still kind of sad that I didn't get to cover was Always a Chance, which also has a very similar kind of feel to it. And the introduction of the Phantom Laser, which was another prop that I had to pull off for this. That one, the prop is very flimsy, unfortunately, but I'm so glad I managed to figure out a way to do that little flip so that I could use it not just as a blaster, but also as a claw. Because it was always very claw. And yes, with so many flashbacks in this episode, the last little flashback we have is to the previous the previous installment of this side of the trilogy, where he was at Power Morphicon and ran into David Fielding, who I'm going. Oh, and yes, Lumina, the 3D printer did kind of explode. I can talk about that again more when we get to more of the Megazord discussion. But yeah, this episode, I'm realizing now, looking at the time, this was, at the time that it came out, the longest episode I'd ever done. And I didn't even realize that it was running that long until I was actually towards the end of editing it. I'm like, wait, this thing's over half an hour. This is the first episode to be over half an hour. And I think part of that is because when it comes to those big milestone episodes like Fighting Spirit, like Forever Red, I really have a lot to say as a fan and as somebody who analyzes this series. And, when it's doing these, big references to the past, like the history of Tommy, there's a lot of context to provide the review side. And the fact that I'm doing that in a very story-heavy, reveal-heavy, action-heavy episode this was the first one to finally blow up big over half an hour. I thought there were so many times I thought I was going to have it be over half an hour, and I did not think this would be the first one to do it. I thought it was going to be something like, episode 80, which was a big, huge episode, or the first Power Morphicon episode, because we were doing a double length episode for review with Clash of the Red Rangers, or the year 2 premiere with Island of Illusion, because again that was a two-parter. So I was really surprised that this was the one where I finally did it, and I did it by like several minutes. And yes, the living weapon manipulation, that does kind of relate a bit more to the original idea I had for the Phantom's backstory, which I'll discuss a little bit more with 97. Along with a little bit more discussion, and along with a little bit more discussion on the Zordon voice and all sorts of other things. 97, I'll have plenty more to discuss. But this, as the finale of the Twin Trilogies, seeing it again, I'm still just supremely proud of it. I always beat myself up over the little errors, that are the result of this, one-man show, always trying to rush to get things out. But, flaws aside in some of the visuals when it came to pulling off a few of the effects, and, obviously my oversight with that one shot of green screen, and that other shot of overlap, I'm really proud of this one. I feel like it's a really well-structured episode. It got me, I got a chance to really dive into the analysis side of things, while also just finally coming clean on reveal after reveal after reveal. And really, with a series like this, where I have so much mythology built out around it, where everything is, where I have so many reveals in mind, I had to decide, like, okay, what reveals do I want to cover in this episode, and who's going to reveal each piece, and for what reason and what way. So there are reveals that I was debating over, that ended up getting pushed later. Like, there are reveals in 97 that I honestly was initially thinking I would have revealed well before that, and I'm like, but it ended up just making more sense to push the reveal later. Which is really funny, because I feel like a lot of shows that have twists and reveals, the tendency is to draw things out, and postpone to maintain the audience interest. But with me, a lot of times I just haven't been able to get to that reveal yet, because there's so many other reveals to do. So I actually end up pushing things later than I intended to, just because to get the full scope of everything earlier would just require such massive info dumps. And this one, like, as I said, with 95, reveal after reveal after reveal. Like, 95 and 96, just boom, 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 boom. 95 is definitely a little bit more rushed, I think, than 96, though. 96 does have that little bit of extra room to breathe, and I think it does have that stronger structure to it, because kind of what you're getting into with the stakes right from the beginning, where 95 kind of leads up to Dark Hunter reveal. This is immediately post Dark Spectre reveal. And so the tension is there right from the first scene. And, this little cat and mouse game to an extent that, where Dark Spectre is really playing with him. And you still don't fully understand the scope of what he's doing and why yet, what his plan is. We do get more reveals in the next 2 episodes, but we're still not quite seeing the totality of what he's been trying to do and trying to orchestrate. We know now, okay, Dark Spectre is an entity that inhabits host bodies, which again, something that I'm still amazed that the comics ended up doing the same approach. Specifically because, these episodes of Power Reviews were written, portions of them filmed, but hadn't been released yet. Comics do the same thing. And that was just so wild to me to realize that we were on such the same wavelength in terms of our thoughts on the character. It couldn't have been, the comics stealing from Power Reviews or Power Reviews copying the comics. This was just strange minds think alike, parallel thinking, on a character that hadn't been explored in over 20 years and had never actually been given this level of complexity to their backstory and their functionality. And yes, thank you. It's chunked out very much with each of these reveals for each of these characters that parallel the episode itself very well. So when we're doing, the Zeo portion of the review, we're also meeting the Red Clone who has his reveal, and then we're doing the White Ranger portion, and there's the Blue Clone with his reveal, and the Green Ranger portion with, where each one is also just trying to ramp up how we break database. How do we break the Phantom Ranger and get the ruby from his chest? Like, that is clearly the big thing that Dark Spectre is trying to pull off throughout this whole episode. He's just trying to get the Phantom Ranger's ruby the whole time. And it's very clear that he's just baiting him the whole time. Breaking him, making him feel responsible for first him having a host body, and then making him feel responsible for all of the impacts of the time storm and the rift, and then making him feel like he is just ultimately a tool and was always constructed to be a tool, and then that reveal that every Power Ranger has already been manipulated and you can't count on them to save you. And you can see that it comes really close to him just giving up. And then he hears Kay's voice. And it just reminds you of how important these friendships have been and how much these people are saving one another through those friendships. And that's that moment that just gives him the little bit he needs to hold on to. Because he may not be able to reach out to the other Power Rangers. He may not be able to rely on them or trust that they know what's happening. But he can trust his friends who are there with him. Who Dark Spectre had counted out, and that was his flaw in this episode. Is the fact that he underestimated these puny humans who are ostensibly powerless. And thank you very much, Jenny. I appreciate that, and thank you too, for the compliments. I appreciate them both. So and then after all these, the final reveal of the episode, after we get the big Megazord punch, which is obviously a reveal in and of itself, we have that last little bit of the voice that he's been hearing in the void, coming from the void since episode 90, is the voice of Zordon. And then Power Rangers once again had a cosmic encounter with the lingering spirit of Zordon in a world between worlds kind of situation, and I'm just like, wow. I know that the production schedules do not allow for one thing to really be inspired by the other, because this was produced in parallel with the show, but just like the strange minds think alike business is still just so funny to me. And I still regret so much that I was never able to successfully get into that writing group and get into that team. Because clearly we've been on the same wavelength for a lot of things. And I wish that I could have. Welcome, El Nero Diablo. Good to see you. We're just kind of wrapping things up. That the Power Ruby is preventing Dark Spectre from possessing Phantom. I guess we'll have to wait and see. You know, we've got 2 episodes remaining. And obviously they're going to be big ones. In terms of complexity, not quite on par with 98, which just had, you know, really a lot of work that went into that. Don't get me wrong, 99 100, plenty of stuff is going to happen. I just didn't need to create quite so many assets or coordinate quite so many elements as I had to with 98. 98 was kind of a bottleneck episode, and now I've gotten to the point where, you know, I have a little bit more control over the things that I'm shooting, rather than having to deal with all these other extraneous factors. But yeah. So it was that, Scott. One final note, one final overlap. It was. And if I had subtitles, that would be him fully becoming the Phantom Ranger. That's actually something that I find important to note, that you may have been picking up here. This is the first time that we actually see the Phantom Ranger use the Phantom Laser in this series. And we've been seeing more and more of Database becoming Phantom across the course of the series. Not just his first morph, but also things like the suit becoming a little bit more refined, being able to use that Ruby Blast attack, and there's just this greater and greater sense of him coming into his own. And that's something that is definitely going to be core to what we'll be seeing in the final 2 episodes. There's just so many overlaps. Yes, I haven't had a chance. I've been working on so many things. I haven't had a chance to review the submissions yet, but I will be looking at yours as soon as I can. And I'm so grateful to you for sending that so quickly. Not many people have gotten back to me yet, but you were the first. So thank you for that, and for all your support across the years. You've definitely been one of our longest, most major contributors, on Nero Diablo. So thank you for all that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I haven't quite covered yet with regards to this. other than that, this was just one that I was building up to for a long time. As you can tell, not only from the reveal of the Megazord, the complexity of the fights that needed to be kind of worked out heavily in advance to make sure that all the different Mii's would interact properly. And this was once I realized I wanted to have this episode, that was when I realized I needed a stunt double and put out the call that Yasha ultimately answered. I can't even and that this was the images of these fights were in my head before I had worked out the fights from 90. Even though 90 obviously was several episodes before this. A good chunk of year 3 was me having some clear endpoints in mind, and then trying to figure out, okay, how do I get there from what I've built in year 2? What would be the reasonable threads to get there? And a lot of it ended up kind of building out and getting more fleshed out as it went, in terms of the deep dives into the characters, in terms of the levels of threat, the complexity of the plot. So much of this process of these final 20 episodes has been so much more of an undertaking than I think I ever really imagined. But shockingly, this episode actually came together quite quickly and smoothly. And I think part of that is because despite how high tension it feels and how complex it feels, so much of it is just me. It's just me performing opposite me. And I have that level of control, and it's just one-on-one conversations, one-on-one fights, with the exception of the big 3-on-1 fight, where I obviously brought in Yash for that and for any other individual bits, where Phantom Ranger had to be in direct contact with one of his clones. But the vast majority of it, these interactions are shot reverse shot, or just a simple green screen where I'm just doing a simple clothing change rather than having to get in and out of a big costume, and that helps. That helps make things move along a lot faster. When you can just do a whole string of shots straight in a row, it's okay, time for me to do all my shots as Red Clone, and I'm just going to do everything from this angle, and then everything from that angle, and everything from that angle. All right. Today I'm doing everything from Blue Clone, everything from this angle, everything from that. And that just knocked out so much of it so quickly in terms of the filming. And then there's, obviously the Phantom Ranger stuff as well. But even with that, a lot of it actually, went fairly smoothly, because these are just, so much of it is just him reacting or him being restrained or falling. And very little of it is actually me having to work out these super complex fights. There's obviously complex action choreography involved in this. But most of it is pretty straightforward. It's just the framing of it that really makes it hit a little bit more. 95 was far more difficult to put together than this one. Because I had to have multiple actors, all with their availabilities, shifting locations with the set. I had to keep repositioning the set. The Dark Honda effect, which was very CG heavy. All of that, very, very complex. 96 is almost breezy by comparison, despite being a longer episode. And having even more reveals and all that. And even more complex fight choreography. But I think because I had such a strong vision in my head of this episode from so early on, I think that really helped me pull it off a lot um, quicker and more smoothly than a number of other episodes um, in year 3 that might not be as impactful, but were more challenging in other ways. And yeah, Dark Spectre's relationship with Phantom, that's explored in the Power Rangers Universe miniseries, which, again, there was no interaction between these characters in the original series. Like, the only aspect we knew was that that Phantom Ranger was chasing after Zordon in Power Rangers in Space. That's all we knew about anything regarding Phantom Ranger and Power Rangers in Space, and anything regarding his knowledge of Dark Spectre. And filling that out across the course of the last, decade, excuse me, both through, my series and separately through the comics has just been kind of fascinating. Yeah, it really is appreciated, Omar Diablo, and everybody else who donates. Like, this is not my main job. This is not something where the the funding goes to direct production costs in a specific way, but every little bit is appreciated, and takes some of the stress off of just day-to-day life. Obviously, teachers don't make a whole lot, and raising the kids is a challenge. So every little bit helps, and I know that's true for plenty of other people as well. And I wish that I hadn't overpromised when it came to the rewards early on, and that I could have at some point actually delivered on those promises. I still feel very bad about that. It's an unfortunate side of being overwhelmed. I should really take down that Patreon video that's not remotely accurate, and it's just perpetually on my to-do list, and I just haven't yet. And it would probably be in my best interest to do so, as with so many things I haven't made enough time for. But yeah, Scott, it's been a journey. It's been a long journey. And there's been so many times where I felt like I'm not going to see it through to the end, and watching things like this that were just like visions in my head for so long of, oh, this would look so cool, that would look so cool, this would be such a cool idea, and knowing that exists out in the world, a great feeling. This has been such a huge part of my life for so long, and for a good long while, I think I was worried over who I would be without it. And I think I felt the same way when I was younger and just obsessed with Power Rangers. Not understanding at the time that this was a manifestation of autistic special interests, because I did not realize back then that I was on the spectrum. I didn't have that understanding of myself or the concept really of autism beyond the occasional TV character. But I'm now at a point in my life where I feel like I'm I'm ready for it to be done. Not just so that I'm no longer working on it, but so that I is with all the stress and everything, but so I can move on to other things and you know really enjoy the life that I've built for myself across the course of the last decade. Uh, this whole project with Station has been very much paralleled by my own. Um, me finding a career, me finally proposing the love of my life, getting married, um, going back to grad school, getting my black belt, finishing a book series that I started reading back when I was in middle school. All these little bits of unfinished business, and finally having a family, having a career, having a home. Things that seemed like almost insurmountable challenges 11 years ago when I was you know pretty depressed and selling knives for a living with a physics degree. Um, you know, I, I'm I feel like I'm ready to finally rest and enjoy the product of all this hard work. Um, not that I'm going to be like slacking off or anything. Obviously, I still have plenty of things that I want to do with my life outside of Power Reviews. Um, but being able to spend more time with my family is going to be wonderful. Um, Focus a little bit more on my career as a teacher. Um, will also um, be great. And then for me to be able to really dive into my local community and help out and feel like I'm ready for that. Um, these are things that I don't know if I can necessarily say that they were because of Power Reviews, but it's definitely been a parallel journey. Um, that at times has definitely taken longer than I would have liked. But I feel like I'm getting to where I need to be in my life. And all that's left right now is to finish this and live the life that I've built and get back to work, trying to help save the real world. Because if I can pull this off, this ridiculous journey that's required so much of me, just in terms of energy and persistence and creative workarounds and all of that. If I can get through all this, I can't wait to see what I'll be able to pull off next. And I'm hoping that whatever it is, it won't just be an accomplishment for me. Just me, myself, and I, as much as this episode was, but for the benefit of the people around me and the world around me. That's, I'm ready to make that shift. And when I started, I was not. I was too overwhelmed by just trying to get by. And now I've been turning myself into the person I want to be. And I want to see if that person can actually make a difference. So, yeah, I'm seeing some, that's, Terry Pratchett, okay. Not sure exactly what it's going to be. I'm looking forward to finding out. Just as I'm sure the database is looking forward to finding out more answers about why he heard Zordon's voice and all that. Which we'll obviously be discussing more with the next episode. So, I have been yammering on, as I do, for far too long, obviously. And we should probably be wrapping things up. So, once again, happy Hanukkah, everybody. To those of you who are Jewish like myself, I hope that you are having a happy and healthy holiday season. I know that the last 2 months have been very distressing for Jewish people around the world, as well as obviously so many others who are impacted by the events going on in Gaza and all of that. And I am hoping and praying for a new Hanukkah miracle, one that can be of peace, of the people of Israel learning to forgive the citizens of Gaza for the actions of their leaders, and likewise for the Palestinian people to be able to forgive the citizens of Israel for the actions of their leaders, and for those leaders to actually act in their people's best interests and work towards peace. I know that's a pipe dream in many regards, but it's one I'm hoping for. In this Hanukkah season, when we're supposed to be celebrating miracles, might as well put that energy out there. So definitely a little bit of a sorry if I ended things on a little bit of a down note there, because I try not to bring too much of the real world in here. I obviously do not approve of what Hamas has done, and I also do not approve of what Israel has done. And I am hoping that those aggressions will end sooner rather than later, before any more lives are destroyed. So that's my Hanukkah wish, if I had to wish for a new Hanukkah miracle. Yes, happy holiday season overall. As we are as we're counting down towards those final weeks of the year, hope you're all having a good time with your loved ones, and I hope you all have a good 2 weeks until our next stream, because we are kind of, again, drawing things out to try and pace things to try and match up with the actual conclusion of the series. So I guess in 2 weeks, it's going to be the 22nd, I'll be wishing you all a Merry Christmas going into that weekend. And then jumping into the new year from there. So, before we close things out, let's not forget our remaining 3 equally non-controversial phrases. So, number 1, say with me, chat. Love is love. Number 2, say with me, chat. Trans rights are human rights. And number 3, say with me, chat. Robots are cool. Except when they get cloned. A lot. Don't clone your robots. There's moral of the day. Don't clone your robots. So, until next time, farewell, Ranger fans, and let the power protect you.